Hello everyone. Welcome to Life Story 999, where we share inspiring stories that warm your heart and brighten your day. Today, we have an incredible tale that will touch your soul. It's about a courageous elderly woman and her remarkable dog who found themselves facing danger not once but twice and emerged victorious both times. Their bravery will leave you in awe. Imagine taking a peaceful stroll through a beautiful park, only to find yourself suddenly in a life-threatening situation. How would you react? What would you do if two strangers confronted you with bad intentions? Now, picture your loyal companion, who happens to be a retired police dog, standing beside you. How might they step up to protect you when things take a turn for the worse? This story showcases the unbreakable bond between a woman and her dog, and how true courage comes in all forms, even with 4 legs and a wagging tail. Stay with us until the end, because what happens next will surprise you. This small town's community comes together in the most heartwarming way to honor these heroes, and you'll want to see how everything unfolds. If you find inspiration in their bravery, be sure to share this story with your loved ones. We'd love to hear your experiences as well. How would you respond in a similar situation? Let us know in the comments below, or send us an email. Let's inspire each other. Margaret Maggie Lewis, a spirited 74-year-old widow, cherished her daily walks through Greenwood Park with her loyal German shepherd, Rex. These walks weren't just exercise for Maggie. They were a cherished routine that brought her peace, a connection with nature, and time to reflect on her memories. Rex was more than just her companion. He was a retired K-9 officer, once a hero in the line of duty, who had served honorably with the local police. Maggie often joked that Rex was her guardian angel, especially after her husband, Tom, passed away. Having Rex by her side gave her a sense of security that she otherwise might have lost after Tom's passing. On one particularly bright morning, the sun filtered through the trees lining the path, casting dappled shadows on the ground. Maggie smiled as she watched Rex sniff at a nearby bush, his ears perked up and alert. She loved the calmness of Greenwood Park, its tall oaks, the soft chirping of birds, and the distant laughter of children on the playground. It was her sanctuary, a place where she felt at home. As Maggie and Rex rounded a familiar bend near the duck pond, something felt off. 2 men stood near the path ahead, their eyes darting around suspiciously. Maggie's heart skipped a beat. They wore shabby clothing, oversized hoodies and worn-out jeans, and had a restless energy about them. She instinctively tightened her grip on Rex's leash, feeling his body tense beside her. The 2 men exchanged glances before stepping directly into Maggie's path, blocking her way. "Well, what do we have here?" the taller man sneered, a crooked smile spreading across his face. "Out for a little stroll, Grandma?" Maggie swallowed her fear, trying to remain calm. "I'm just heading home, gentlemen. Please let me pass," she said, her voice steady but her heart racing. The shorter man, who had a rough-looking beard and a scar along his cheek, took a step closer. "Looks like you've got yourself a fancy dog there," he said, eyeing Rex. "And maybe something else we might want." He gestured towards the small purse slung over Maggie's shoulder. Maggie's pulse quickened. She could feel Rex's muscles coiling, his eyes locked on the men. "I don't want any trouble," Maggie said, her voice firmer now. "Just let me be." The taller man reached out, grabbing at her purse. "Hand it over, lady," he demanded. Before Maggie could react, Rex sprang into action. With a deep, menacing growl, he lunged at the taller man, his powerful jaws clamping down on the man's arm. The man let out a pained yell, stumbling backward as he tried to free himself from Rex's grip. The shorter man's eyes widened in shock, and without hesitation, he turned and ran, disappearing down the path. Maggie stood frozen, her heart pounding as she watched Rex expertly subdue the man, just as he had been trained to do during his years as a K-9 officer. Within moments, the taller man was on the ground, whimpering in pain, and Rex returned to Maggie's side, his eyes still alert, his body ready for any further threat. Maggie reached down, her hands trembling, and patted Rex's head. "Good boy, Rex," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You saved me." The park seemed to come alive again as the immediate danger passed. Birds chirped, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves above. Maggie took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She looked around, hoping someone might have seen what happened, but the path was empty. She knew she needed to report the incident, but first, she needed to get home, to safety. Maggie and Rex made their way back to her small cottage on the edge of town. It was a quaint, cozy place, with flower boxes under the windows and a white picket fence that Tom had painted years ago. As they approached the front door, Maggie couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She had always felt safe in her neighborhood, but today had shattered that sense of security. She glanced down at Rex, who was still on high alert, his ears perked up and his eyes scanning their surroundings. "Come on, boy," she said softly, opening the door and ushering Rex inside. She locked the door behind her, her hands still trembling slightly. Maggie sank into her favorite armchair, pulling Rex close. He rested his head on her knee, his eyes never leaving her face. "What would I do without you?" she whispered, stroking his fur. Rex let out a soft whine, as if to say he'd always be there to protect her. Maggie decided to call her friend and neighbor, Linda, to let her know what had happened. Linda was shocked and insisted on coming over immediately. Within minutes, Linda arrived, her face pale with worry. "Oh, Maggie, are you all right?" she asked, rushing to her side. Maggie nodded. "I'm okay, thanks to Rex. He scared them off," she said, her voice still shaky. Linda glanced at Rex and smiled. "He really is your guardian angel, isn't he?" Maggie smiled, nodding. "Yes, he is. I don't know what I'd do without him." Despite Linda's comforting presence, Maggie couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Something about the men's determined expressions haunted her. She knew Rex had protected her today, but she couldn't help but worry. What if they came back? What if next time they were even more prepared? Rex seemed to sense her unease. That night, he refused to leave his spot by the front door, his ears constantly twitching at every sound. Maggie tried to sleep, but every creak of the house made her heart race. She knew Rex would protect her, but the fear of the unknown lingered. Little did Maggie know, the danger wasn't truly over. Those men weren't finished yet, and their next move would put Maggie and Rex to the ultimate test. Later that evening, Maggie tried to relax in her cozy home, but Rex remained uneasy. His ears perked up at every sound, and he paced near the front door, his instincts telling him that something was not right. Maggie, noticing his anxiety, tried to reassure him, but she couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her chest since their encounter in the park. Around midnight, Rex's instincts proved right. Maggie awoke to his urgent barking, a deep and forceful sound that reverberated through the house. Her heart pounded as she climbed out of bed and hurried to the window. Peering through the curtains, Maggie's breath caught in her throat. She could see shadows moving outside. It was the same two men, now attempting to break into her house. Panic surged through her, but she knew she couldn't let fear take over. Without hesitation, Maggie grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her fingers trembling as she relayed the emergency. The dispatcher assured her that officers were on their way. Maggie hung up and turned her attention to Rex, who had already positioned himself near the back door, his body low and ready to defend her. She whispered, "Stay with me, boy," her voice shaky but resolute. The intruders were persistent, working on the lock at the back door. Maggie could hear the metallic clinks and murmurs of the men as they tried to force their way in. Her heart hammered in her chest, and she felt a wave of helplessness. But Rex, sensing her fear, let out another ferocious bark, his eyes focused and determined. Maggie knew that Rex would do whatever it took to keep her safe. Suddenly, the lock gave way, and the door swung open. One of the men stepped inside, his eyes scanning the dimly lit kitchen. Before he could react, Rex lunged, his powerful body launching toward the intruder. The man barely had time to register what was happening before Rex's jaws clamped down on his arm, forcing him to the ground with a pained yell. Maggie watched from the hallway, her heart racing as she saw the scene unfold. The second man, seeing his companion being overpowered by the dog, turned to flee. He stumbled through the yard, but Rex, after ensuring the first intruder was incapacitated, dashed after him. Maggie could hear the scuffle outside as Rex cornered the man near the fence, his deep growls echoing through the quiet night. She could see through the window that the man was frozen, too terrified to move, with Rex standing guard. It felt like an eternity, but within minutes, the flashing red and blue lights of police cars lit up the street. Officers rushed to the door, and Maggie quickly unlocked it, her hands still trembling. She pointed them towards the back where Rex had the two intruders subdued. One of the officers, Jamie, who had worked with Rex during his K-9 days, couldn't help but smile as she approached the scene. "Good old Rex," Jamie said, her voice filled with admiration. "He's still got it." She knelt beside the dog, giving him a gentle pat. Rex, his eyes still sharp, relaxed slightly at the familiar touch. Maggie finally let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "Are you all right, Mrs. Lewis?" Jamie asked, standing and approaching Maggie. Maggie nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Thanks to Rex. He saved me again." The officers took the intruders into custody, the men casting fearful glances at Rex as they were led away in handcuffs. Jamie turned back to Maggie and smiled. "You've got quite the hero here. He hasn't lost his touch one bit." Maggie knelt down and hugged Rex, her hands buried in his thick fur. "You're my hero, Rex," she whispered. Rex looked up at her, his eyes softening, and wagged his tail gently. For Rex, protecting Maggie was simply what he was meant to do. It was all in a day's work for a loyal companion. The next day, word of Maggie and Rex's bravery spread quickly across the small town of Greystone. Maggie and her loyal companion became local celebrities almost overnight. People admired Rex's heroics and Maggie's resilience, and soon enough, neighbors, friends, and even strangers were stopping by to express their support. The community rallied around Maggie, offering words of encouragement and small acts of kindness, homemade pies, fresh flowers, and even offers to repair her fence. Despite all the attention, Maggie remained humble. Her focus was now on the upcoming court case, hoping that justice would be served. In the following days, the courtroom was filled with members of the community, all eager to see justice done for Maggie and Rex. The two intruders, Tom and Eddie, stood before Judge Clara Morrison, a stern yet fair woman with a reputation for taking no nonsense. Tom, the quieter of the two, stood with his head down, visibly shaken. He expressed regret for his actions, his voice barely a whisper as he apologized to Maggie and the community. Eddie, on the other hand, was defiant. He smirked and even made mocking remarks about Rex, his arrogance palpable. Judge Morrison, her eyes narrowing, was unimpressed. She listened patiently as both men gave their statements, but it was clear that Eddie's attitude struck a nerve. "This community is built on respect," Judge Morrison began, her voice carrying through the room. "Respect for each other, respect for our neighbors, and respect for those who protect us. You, Mr. Eddie, seem to have forgotten that. Let me remind you, that dog you mock served this community honorably, putting his life on the line to keep people like you safe. And now, even in retirement, he continues to protect. You do well to remember that." The courtroom was silent as Judge Morrison continued. She looked at Tom, her gaze softening slightly. "Mr. Tom, your regret seems genuine. However, actions have consequences, and you must face them. I hope you use this opportunity to reflect and change your ways." Ultimately, Judge Morrison handed down her sentences. Eddie, due to his lack of remorse and disrespectful attitude, received a harsher punishment, a substantial prison sentence that reflected the seriousness of his actions and his unwillingness to acknowledge his wrongdoings. Tom, on the other hand, was given a chance to rehabilitate himself. He was sentenced to community service, with an emphasis on helping vulnerable members of the community, the elderly, the disabled, and those in need. Judge Morrison believed that perhaps through service, Tom could understand the value of kindness and respect. As the gavel came down, Maggie felt a wave of relief wash over her. Justice had been served. The men who had terrorized her were now facing the consequences of their actions, and her beloved Rex had played a pivotal role in ensuring the streets of Greystone were safer. After the sentencing, many community members approached Maggie, offering hugs and words of support. Rex, by her side, received countless pats and treats, his tail wagging as he soaked in the affection. One young boy approached with wide eyes and a nervous smile. "Is he really a hero dog?" the boy asked, looking up at Maggie. Maggie smiled warmly and nodded. Yes, he is. He's my hero, and now he's a hero to all of us. The boy beamed, reaching out to gently pet Rex, who responded with a friendly lick to the boy's hand. As Maggie and Rex left the courthouse, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, not just for Rex, but for the community that had supported them through this ordeal. It reminded her that despite the dangers and the bad people out there was so much good in the world. Good people who stood by each other, who protected one another, and who valued justice and compassion. Later that evening, back at home, Maggie sat on her porch with Rex lying at her feet. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the yard, and Maggie felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt since the ordeal began. She reached down, her hand resting on Rex's head. "We did it, boy," she whispered. Rex looked up at her, his eyes full of loyalty and love, as if to say that he'd always be there. Her guardian, her hero, her friend. The people of Greystone would remember this day, not just as a tale of heroism, but as a reminder of the power of resilience, the importance of community, and the bond between a woman and her loyal companion. Maggie knew that as long as she had Rex by her side, she could face whatever challenges came her way. In the days following the trial, the townspeople of Greystone rallied around Maggie and Rex. Their story had touched everyone, and the local paper featured a heartfelt article about the bravery and loyalty shown by the elderly widow and her loyal companion. Neighbors stopped by to offer their support, bringing casseroles, fresh produce from their gardens, and heartfelt words of encouragement. Maggie was overwhelmed by the kindness that poured in from every corner of the town. One morning, Maggie was surprised to hear a knock at her door. When she opened it, she was greeted by a group of children from the neighborhood, each carrying paintbrushes and cans of brightly colored paint. "We want to do something for Rex," one of the children, a little girl named Emily, said with a shy smile. Maggie watched as the children painted a mural in the park, depicting Rex as a superhero, complete with a flowing cape and a bright, triumphant smile. The mural captured Rex's spirit perfectly, and Maggie found herself tearing up as she watched the scene come to life. The community had found a beautiful way to honor her beloved companion. Touched by the outpouring of support, Maggie decided to host a small gathering in her backyard to thank everyone. She decorated the yard with fairy lights, and neighbors came with potluck dishes to share. Laughter and conversation filled the air, and Maggie felt a sense of warmth and belonging that she hadn't experienced in a long time. Rex, the guest of honor, wandered from person to person, his tail wagging happily as he received pats and treats from everyone. During the gathering, Officer Linda Parker, who had worked with Rex during his days with the police force, stood up and called for everyone's attention. In her hands, she held a wooden plaque, polished and engraved with a simple yet powerful inscription. "In honor of Rex, for his unwavering bravery and service to the community." Linda smiled as she approached Maggie. "Rex has always been a hero, and today, we want to thank him for continuing to be one," she said. Maggie was overwhelmed with emotion as she accepted the plaque. She looked at Rex, who was now sitting beside her, his ears perked up as if sensing the importance of the moment. "Rex isn't just my protector. He's my family," Maggie said, her voice cracking slightly. "I hope his story inspires others to stand up for what's right, to be brave when it matters most, and to always look out for one another." The crowd erupted in applause, and Maggie could see tears in the eyes of several of her neighbors. It wasn't just about what had happened. It was about the sense of unity that had grown out of a dark moment. The mural, the gathering, the plaque, they were all symbols of what Greystone stood for. In the face of adversity, the town had come together, bound by their shared values of compassion and courage. As the sun dipped below the horizon, and the gathering slowly began to wind down, Maggie sat in a chair beneath the twinkling fairy lights, watching as her neighbors laughed and talked. Rex lay at her feet, his eyes half closed, content and relaxed. Emily, the little girl who had helped paint the mural, approached Maggie with a small bouquet of flowers she had picked from her garden. "For you and Rex," she said softly. Maggie took the flowers, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said, her voice filled with warmth. She looked out at the people gathered in her yard, people who had shown her that even in times of fear and uncertainty, There was always love and hope to be found. That night, as Maggie closed the door to her house and turned off the lights, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The fear that had once gripped her was gone, replaced by a deep sense of belonging and security. She looked down at Rex, who was already curled up in his favorite spot. "We're not alone, boy," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "We've got a whole town behind us." Rex wagged his tail, his eyes closing as he drifted off to sleep, content in the knowledge that he had done his job and that he would always be there to protect the ones he loved. As Maggie sat with Rex on her porch one warm evening, she reflected on the events of the past weeks. The quiet rustle of leaves in the breeze and the golden glow of the setting sun made it the perfect time to think. Though she had been deeply shaken by the ordeal, Maggie couldn't help but feel an immense sense of gratitude. Gratitude for Rex, whose unwavering loyalty had kept her safe, and gratitude for the strength she discovered within herself that she never knew she had. The experience had not only reminded her of Rex's courage, but also shown her the kindness and support of her community. Maggie reached down to stroke Rex's fur, her fingers brushing through his thick coat as he lay comfortably beside her. "You're more than just my protector, aren't you, boy?" she murmured, her voice soft. Rex looked up at her with those familiar, loyal eyes, his tail giving a gentle wag. She knew that without Rex by her side, things could have turned out very differently. But Rex had done more than just protect her. He had inspired her and reminded her that love and courage often come in unexpected forms. The townspeople of Greystone had come together in a way that Maggie had never imagined. She thought about the mural painted in Rex's honor, the heartfelt words from Officer Linda Parker, and the gathering of neighbors in her backyard. It all made her realize how important it was to have a sense of community, to know that there were people around who would support one another during challenging times. She had always valued independence, but this experience had shown her that strength could also be found in leaning on others, in being part of something greater than oneself. Maggie looked out at the quiet street, the soft glow of porch lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settled in. She hoped her story, and Rex's, might inspire others to find their own courage. She hoped it would remind people of the importance of standing up for what is right, of protecting those who need it, and of finding strength in love and loyalty. Rex had shown her that heroes come in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes they walk on four legs with wagging tails. To our viewers, what would you do if you were in Maggie's shoes? Would you have the courage to stand strong, even in the face of fear? How do you think communities can support one another during difficult times? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please share them in the comments below. Your stories and experiences could inspire others, just as Maggie and Rex's story has inspired us all. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Life Story 999. By sharing, you help spread messages of hope, bravery, and kindness. And remember, your story could be the next one we share. Whether it's about a moment of courage, a time when someone helped you, or an experience that reminded you of the power of community, email us or leave a comment with your experiences. We'd love to hear from you. As Maggie leaned back in her chair, the sky now painted in deep shades of purple and blue, she felt a sense of calm she hadn't felt in weeks. She knew that challenges would come and go, but with Rex by her side and the support of her community behind her, she could face whatever lay ahead. "We're not alone, boy," she whispered to Rex, her voice filled with warmth and confidence. Rex gave another gentle wag of his tail, as if he understood every word. Thank you for joining us today, and for being part of this journey. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember to treasure those who make life special, whether they walk on 2 legs or 4. Together, we can make the world a little bit brighter, one act of courage and kindness at a time.